Hey friend, today I want to talk about compassion. Um, the other week I heard a quote on a podcast that I really like, and I'll tell you about that later. But the quote was this: "The most compassionate people have the best boundaries." Now, I've heard this quote said before, but when I heard it the other week, it really struck me so much so that I actually rewound and listened to it several different times. Um, and so I thought, this is a perfect time of year. If you're watching on the replay, this is December. You might tell from the Christmas tree behind me. But we're headed into this month where, there's a lot of things going on. We're being pulled this way and that way, lots of shenanigans. And I thought I would like to focus in on the dual nature of compassion and how it's especially relevant to us as music teachers. So that's the topic of the day. I hope you'll stick around and listen to this discussion and the tips that we have for you. We've got some resources as well. Before we dive into all of that, we're going to make sure that we're going live in all of the places. So while I play a little music, please do me a favor and say hello in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I'll be right back. One of these days, I'm going to make that intro music a little longer so I don't feel so panicked when I'm trying to get all of this stuff done. Anyway, welcome. I'm so glad that you've taken a little time out of your day to listen to this discussion. The topic of the day is that we are going to be talking about compassion and how we can rethink it so that we can create a more sustainable teaching and a more sustainable business. And so we are going to be discussing quite a few things today. We're going to be digging into, what is compassion? What happens when we don't understand the dual nature of compassion? We're going to talk about boundaries. We're going to talk about lots of different things here. So I'm really excited to share this discussion with you. And I do have some books that I'm going to recommend, which might make for some really great holiday reading. So, hey, before I get any further than this, I just want to say hi and welcome to those of you who might be new here. My name is Sara Campbell. I am a business strategist, mindset, and marketing coach for music studio owners like you, those amazing independent music teachers. And I go live here most Wednesdays where we talk about those topics. And today we're going to be really digging into mindset. And, I know that the topic of mindset is thrown around a lot. And people are like, mindset, whatever. But let me be real clear. I think it's really important to talk about our mindsets and to work on them consistently, because if we want to be successful as humans and successful as business owners, it is really important to have solid mindsets in place that allow us to put the strategies in place that we need, etc. So, all right, let's say hello to some people here. We've got Pete's tuning in. Hey there, Pete. Nice to see you. Motif Music Studios is tuning in on YouTube and says, what a fabulous topic. Why, thank you. And Kimberly is tuning in, a fellow Pennsylvanian. Awesome. Kimberly, what part of PA are you from? Those who don't know, I'm on right on the Ohio border, 5 minutes, 5 minutes driving time, and I'm in Ohio, smack dab in the middle of Amish country land. So that's where we are today. Okay, so we have lots of great things that we're going to discuss, but I do want to let those of you know that we do have the Savvy Sara bot set up in all of the places. So what she's going to send you today will be a short version of what we're discussing, and also a link to one of the resources, an Amazon link to one of the resources that I'm going to show you as well. So if you'd like to get a hold of that, if you are on Instagram or Facebook, if you put the word compassion down below, we will make sure that you get a hold of that. You'll get a little message from the bot. And if you are on YouTube, look in the description of this video and you will find a link that you can click. So all of the good stuff. All right, hey there. Okay, York, South Central. That makes sense. Very cool. Grace is here. She's tuning in. So nice to see you. And Stephanie's here as well. Hey, so nice. Okay, so let's dig in, shall we? And I don't know if you guys can let me know if you can hear this. I'm running my robot vacuum downstairs. I'm just super curious. Does it pick up on the mic? I know you're probably going to hear when he does his little celebratory like beeping when he's finished, and he's probably going to be finished in about 5 minutes. So let me know if you can hear that. Okay. All right, let's unpack the issue today. I've done a lot of prep for this. I'm really excited to talk this through. You can't hear it, Stephanie. Okay, cool. Actually, we need to move this a little bit higher. Okay, let's do that. Great. Karen's tuning in with her daughter, who is a Mary Kay consultant. Oh, awesome. Thanks for being here. Okay, so let's get started. Why did I pick this topic? I just want to give a little background to this. We'll keep it nice and short. Last week, I was listening to a podcast. I am a podcast junkie. I listen to lots of podcasts. And one of my favorite podcasts is called Life Kit on NPR. And I think this was a rather old broadcast. I can't even remember the official title of it. But I know that I believe it had something to do with gratitude. And throughout the discussion, one of the quotes that was said kind of stopped me in my tracks. And the quote was, "The most compassionate people have the best boundaries." And I think it's a really interesting quote, because especially in our field, since we are in the arts, and the arts, by the nature of being the arts, are, really tied in with the emotions. They're tied in with our sense of self. And as music teachers, we're not just teaching people music, we're teaching them to be good human beings. And part of that is that we create these really fabulous relationships with our students. And tied up with the relationship part that we have with our clients, we can often find ourselves, really leaning into compassion, which is a beautiful thing, because, learning music is hard, performing is hard. And as the good teachers that you all are, which we know, having that level of compassion to guide people is important. But also, compassion has different sides. And that's what we're going to be digging into, the different sides of compassion. So let's do this. Okay, our first point today, let's talk about redefining compassion. And I'm going to start with a little allegory because, y'all, we love stories here. Okay, so here's the story. I want you to imagine a picturesque village where there are two gardeners, and they are both renowned for their lush and beautiful gardens. Both were known for their compassion, but the way that they approached their gardens and their lives were quite different. So our first gardener, we're going to call her Lily. She's always busy. She tended not only for her garden, but also to the gardens of all of her neighbors. And she believed that a truly compassionate gardener should always put others' gardens first. And of course, her neighbors loved her. Lily's garden, however, after a time, started to wilt. She was so busy taking care of the gardens of everyone else in the neighborhood that she started to neglect her own. And her flowers lost their vibrance. Her plants started to grow weak. She gave all of the water and nutrients that she had to others and left nothing for her garden. So that was Lily. Now let's talk about Rose, our second gardener. She also helped her neighbors, but she did it a little bit differently. So every morning she would tend to her own garden first, ensuring that the garden had enough water, enough sunlight, enough care, and only then would she assist others. Rose's garden was not only a site of beauty, but a source of inspiration and learning for the entire village. She taught her neighbors how to care for their own gardens, and she did not neglect her own. And so her garden thrived, and so did the gardens of her neighbors, who learned from her example. It's a little on the nose, I realize. But what do we take away from this? Lily, our first gardener, while she was well-intentioned, she mistook self-neglect for compassion. And her constant giving without self-care led to her garden's decline. Ultimately, also diminishing her ability to help others. Whereas Rose, she really understood the value and that true compassion actually starts with oneself. So by caring for her own garden first, she was able to be more effective and a sustainable source of inspiration for others. So there's our little story. And I do believe that we could retell this allegory in the world of music teaching. I'm sure you all can, as we were listening to the story, think of examples where we might have been Lily, right? We might have been putting our clients' needs above our own. And in some cases, that's going to happen. But if it happens all the time, then is it really compassion that we're showing, or is it self-neglect? All right. Yes, there we go. So Motif says, sustainable source of inspiration for others. Fabulous thoughts. Yes, exactly. Okay, Elizabeth got another great takeaway. Lack of self-care is not a sign of compassion. Yeah, exactly. So compassion is not only something that we show towards others. Compassion is something that we need to, myself included, friends, we need to show ourselves compassion more. And that compassion often comes in the form of self-care. It can also come in the form of keeping solid boundaries, etc. And we're going to talk about that. So let me give you a little challenge here, right? Or rather an invitation, as my friend Kristen would say. I would love to invite you as we head throughout this December, because I know you all are knee-deep in recitals, and lots of you are gigging musicians, so you've also got a lot of gigs on the calendar as well. My invitation to you is to sit down with your calendar later today, or whenever you listen to this broadcast, and to schedule some me time or some family time, just as you would schedule lessons. Because it's easy to put lessons on a calendar and hold that time and space sacred because it's for others. But it is much harder to set aside time in our days and hold it sacred when that time is just for us. So that's my invitation to you. And I would love to know, what are you going to spend that time doing? I'll tell you what I'm going to spend that time doing, because this last weekend, it was very fun. We had a fabulous time, my husband and I. But most of the things that we did were acts for others. And that's great. This is a perfect time of year for that. But what I noticed is that after the weekend was over, it was one of those times where Monday rolled around and I thought, whew, I need another weekend. So I am going to be setting some extra time aside for myself this weekend. And I think I'm going to sit around, maybe read a book. Maybe do some drawing and doodling. I don't know, something just to clear the air. I see Judy is sharing, I'm home 3 days before Christmas and 4 Christmas Eve masses so far. It's going to be awesome to have a few minutes each morning for me. That's my goal. Judy, I'm glad that you shared that, because sometimes people, or just all of us, we come up with these excuses that it's too hard to find time for ourselves. But even if it's just, hey, I'm going to get up a little bit earlier than normal so I can sit with my coffee or my tea, maybe before the kids get up, before we have that first thing on the calendar, and I'm just going to spend a little time with myself. Amen to that. All right. So that's our first point today. If that has resonated with you, let me know down below if you're enjoying this conversation so far. Maybe take a moment and, show your appreciation by hitting that heart button, the like button, like and heart this video, all that stuff. If this is something that you think your music teacher friends could benefit from, like one of the biggest ways that you can show your appreciation here at Savvy is to share this broadcast with one of your music teacher groups, or send it off, via text to a friend. That would be amazing. Elizabeth, okay, this is great. I'll read this because this is a larger comment. My challenge reaction. Start the day with Sarah Witten's new morning video in the Aligned Library. Oh, that's beautiful. Second, Make sure I keep doing Meredith sing every day for me. Oh, great. Just play and explore rep that really brings me joy. I'm glad that you brought that up, Elizabeth. I hopefully I'll remember to bring this point up a little bit later in the broadcast because I want to talk about this idea of getting back into music as music teachers, because I cannot tell you how many music teachers, myself included, don't practice or even enjoy music. It's weird. Am I just alone in that? Or please tell me that I'm not nuts, that after your day of listening to music, like one of the first things that I want is total silence, right? Do you listen to music in your car or at home, or is it mostly silence? Or am I just weird? I don't know. Pete says, I'm biting off homeschooling after the holidays, training myself to get up at 5 a.m. for my personal reading and study. That's beautiful. Sharon says, you are not nuts. Judy says, you're not alone. Violin Judy does not practice violin. Oh my gosh, thank you. You all are making me feel like okay, I am together with you. Yes, I used to be all about the silence after teaching. Yeah. Motif shares, I've been thinking lots about a slowful. Ooh, I like that word. Slowful. That's fun. Slowful approach to business leadership and how it preserves our stamina and leads others into sustainability. Oh, that's gorgeous. Y'all, let's point to it. Point right there. Let's remember that, because that's really, 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 really good. Yeah, Aaliyah says it too. I'm with you. I rarely listen to music. It was so lovely meeting with you last week, by the way. Elizabeth says, I keep needing to remind myself I get into this for the love of it and only been listening for gig work. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, Grace often says that between student rep and stuff you're paid to do, I can't remember what I actually like to sing anymore. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh, look, Elizabeth's takeaway is slowfulness. That's a great word. I'm going to write that down and probably think some more about some slowfulness. Okay, so as we're redefining compassion, part of that redefinition is really leaning into self-compassion. And we're going to talk more about that, but let's first focus on what happens when we don't do those things. All right, we're going to dig into the pain points a little bit. I apologize. We'll try to keep it light. So what happens when we forget to show ourselves self-compassion? Well, I'm going to share some stories about when I used to do this. So get prepared. But what happens is we tend to then kind of bend over backwards to accommodate. And let's be honest, oftentimes when we do that, it's actually not as appreciated by others as we might think that it could be or should be or whatever. And when we do this constant, and I'm not talking about like a one-off circumstance where you decide very mindfully to step outside of your boundaries, these rules that you've written for yourself, these rules that you've written for your business, because you have made a choice to say, okay, in this circumstance, I am going to make an exception. That is one thing, right? That is not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about when we find ourselves doing this a lot, right? If you think about it, all the conversations that happen in the music teacher forums on Facebook, often, if you read that, you read a post or a question from somebody, I bet you 75%, I'm making up statistics, y'all. Here we go. 75% of those posts probably have to do with a lack of self-compassion. Not intentionally, but just because we kind of, we do this out of fear, out of scarcity, and we want to really, we want to please others, right? So here's a little quote for you. Crossing the line, that line being your own boundary, crossing the line doesn't make us heroes. It makes us volunteers for burnout. Let me say it again. Crossing the line does not make us heroes. It makes us volunteers for burnout. And in this past year, I mean, I know a lot of like burnout has been on the rise for a while. It's something that a lot of people talk about nowadays. But I think it's especially hit hard this year because we're finally, past this gigantic adrenaline rush that just kept us going through, you know what. And now things are kind of coming back into normal, but we are living life at a different pace. And that anxiety and that rush has stuck around with us. And I cannot tell you how many conversations I have had with clients, with myself, about burnout. So, thank you. Mic drop. Oh, good. And Pete put the word compassion down below. If you do want to get a hold of all the things we're talking about today, go ahead and pop that down there. If you're on YouTube, look for the link. So back to this, right? Let's talk about some real world scenarios. And today I am just going to share my own stories here. So when we overstep our boundaries a lot, for me, one of the things that I find is that while in the past, when I would make that conscious decision to overstep the boundaries that I had set for myself, I did so well-intentioned, thinking that students would be students and clients and parents would be very appreciative of that. But what I found is that because at that point in my teaching career, I was overstepping my boundaries a lot, it wasn't something that was appreciated so much as expected. And I'll tell you a story about exactly like an exact circumstance that pops in my mind. I had a fantastically talented voice student, and she was very busy. I mean, I can't imagine doing what she did. Like every single day on the calendar, 7 days a week was packed. And, I worked 5 days a week. I worked Monday through Friday. And she could not find a time in all of the times that I had available back when I was teaching an enormous amount of students, not a single time that could work with her schedule. And so they made the request for me to teach her on Saturday mornings. And because this student was very talented, I knew that she was going to pursue music. I thought, all right, I'm going to give this a try. And lo and behold, by the time the second week rolled around, who was feeling lots of self-resentment? Me. Because those Saturday mornings had been this sacred space where I could spend time at home, where I could get caught up with things, where I could just take that work hat off and spend time with my husband, choose to go and do events, etc., go grocery shopping, do yoga, whatever. But when I had given up that time, I noticed that it really wasn't appreciated. The lesson was getting canceled by the client. And so I had to walk things back and have a hard discussion around, having that boundary again. Can anyone else relate to that? 2014 Sara was a lot different Sara than 2023. So what can we do with this, right? Here's a practical exercise that I'd like you to consider. The exercise is this. I want you to grab a notebook or, Google Doc this, whatever feels good to you. Get some Post-it notes. And I want you to list recent incidences where you have felt drained. And I want you to have a team meeting. We say team meeting here if you are a team of one. Have a team meeting and discuss how those instances could have been handled differently if you had either firmer boundaries or stuck to the boundaries that you already had in place. Yay. Yeah, I see that. Elizabeth says, yeah, I put a no weekends rule in for the same reason. And you know what? Let me be clear too. I'm not throwing shade at anybody who decides to work on the weekends. There are many teachers that I know where weekends are their happy spot to work, and then they take off other days of the week. But just for me, and my life, that just does not work. So again, our first challenge was to put some of that me time on the calendar, right? Get really specific, like actually block it off. And if you know you're going to have a hard time keeping that me time, then maybe you need to find an accountability partner. Our second practical exercise that we can do here is to, when you do find yourself kind of teetering on the edge of burnout or just feeling tired, right? Make a list of the things that may have caused you feeling drained. And then have that team meeting and think about, how could this have been handled differently if I had better boundaries. All right, moving on. Is this resonating? I hope so. Let's see. Let me see how we're doing over on Instagram. Sorry, Instagrammers. I oftentimes don't talk to you because I can't see you on eCam, but I see Sara Ramsey's here and Songs and Studies for Kids is here. Feel free to join in on the conversation. Nice to see you both. All right, the third point here. This is we're going to make this long, or we're going to try to, but I can't because it's not letting me. So that's just where it's going to be. All right. So what we're going to do here is talk about self-compassion as a compassionate act. Elizabeth said this is resonating with her. Grace says Tuesdays and Saturdays are your days off. And I've been getting it saying, oh, you're so good. I love this. This is great. I've been getting better at saying I don't teach on those days. Takes practice, friend, doesn't it? All right. So self-compassion as a compassionate act. Good morning, Sara. Nice to see you. Okay. Let's talk about this. First, I wanted to recommend I don't often recommend resources here. I'll recommend blogs and stuff like that, but I wanted to recommend an actual book. How about that? So this book is called Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself. It's actually recommended to me by my sister. It's by Kristen Neff. I don't know if you can see it here. So it's this little book here. This is a fabulous read. I think that this is something that everyone should read because in our society, we are really taught that self-compassion is really not that important. And we're not talking like, hey, self-care, go have a bubble bath, right? No, people talk about self-care a lot, but honestly, a lot of the self-care that people talk about, it's just fluff, right? It's not the real deep self-care that we need in order to, thrive. So this book is absolutely fabulous. Kristen Neff has a PhD. She's really smart, and she's done a lot of research on self-compassion, and that resource is amazing. One other resource that I also want to recommend to the ladies who are here, this is called, she wrote a follow-up about 10 years later. It's called Fierce Self-Compassion, How Women Can Harness Kindness to Speak Up, Claim Their Power, and Thrive. Women business owners and probably male business owners as well. This is a fabulous book. I cannot recommend it enough. And I do have links to these books in the show notes from today. If you put compassion down below, it'll send you off to them. At any rate, okay, so self-compassion as a compassionate act. When we lean into self-compassion, it allows us to refill our own cup. It goes back to that the allegory that I shared earlier about the gardeners, right? And I had another allegory about music teachers, but I figured story time's over, Sara. We're just going to tell one today, but maybe I'll share it in a post later. Would you like that? Would you like a little allegory post? Maybe I'll share it. Okay. I would like to suggest a few things when it comes to practicing self-compassion. So it starts with a boundary audit. And this is where we want to spend a little bit of time to identify where we might be overextending ourselves. And we did a broadcast recently about overextending ourselves. It was something we did back in November. You can look for it in all of our playlists. It's listed there. It is important to have that boundary audit. I think on a regular basis, let's say every 6 months, right? Or if you're really in burnout mode, you're going to have that. You're going to have that on a weekly basis. It's a little bit of a reality check when we do that boundary audit to kind of figure out, hey, where are boundaries being crossed? Not just in your professional life, but also in your personal life. And I would like to issue a boundary pledge challenge. What does that look like? So a boundary pledge challenge is after you have that little audit with your team, is to come up with a set of personal commitments to uphold your boundaries. And when we can do that, kind of pledging to ourselves, it's like what Grace mentioned earlier. She was practicing saying, I don't teach on those days. I don't teach on those days, right? That boundary pledge is something that we can make a list of Here are the things, here are my solid boundaries that I will not break. And here are the things that I can say, right? Setting these, personal commitments. Here are the things that I can say when someone comes to me and, through no fault of their own, just asks for something that's outside of what you would like to provide. When we can do that, when we can lean into self-compassion, we're doing our clients a favor because we are teaching them that self-compassion is important and that boundaries are important. And it might not be a very direct lesson, but over time, it is something that will sink in. And it is also something that is going to enhance our abilities as business owners and as teachers to show up with genuine compassion for people in the future. So there you go. Oh, okay. Elizabeth says yes to an allegory post. I will do it just for you, Elizabeth. If anybody else wants it, let me know. Okay. I think we're going to wrap it up there. We're going to do a rapid recap for those who have maybe joined in a little bit later today. Again, if you appreciated what was being said here, do me a favor, share this video, and, leave a little comment. I know a lot of you show up and maybe are just listening in. And if you don't feel comfortable commenting, because I understand there's a little thing that happens in your brain about like, oh, what if people know I'm working on my business? Trust me, let people know that you're working on your business. But hey, if you want to give me some feedback, shoot me an email, Sara@savvymusicstudio.com. All right, before we get to the recap, if you're enjoying this, please be sure to like, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Click the buttons to get more notifications from us. I will let you know this is actually next week will be our last broadcast of 2023. So I'm looking forward to having one more discussion with you this year. And then we'll take a little break for the holidays, boundaries and all of that good things. And don't forget today, if you do want to check out those books I mentioned and get the show notes, drop the word compassion down below if you're on Instagram or on Facebook, or you can look for a link in the description on YouTube. Let's do a little recap. Aaliyah, thank you. That makes me feel really good. Motif Music says, yes, I find it's been received so well by clients when they hear from me a messaging that I am here to bring ease to their life too. That's great. Oh yeah, I know, right? Where did the year go? Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm so glad. All right. Rapid recap. If you joined in a little bit late, let's go through all the tips that we went through. Oh, this is going to be a tough one to shorten up for a few minutes. Please send me well wishes. All right, I think I can do this. Okay, here we go. I heard a quote the other day that really struck me, and the quote was this: the most compassionate people have the best boundaries. Ooh, I love that. And as we head into busy seasons, whether it's the holidays or it's a recital season or whatever, I thought it might be nice to have a little short discussion around the dual nature of compassion and how it is especially relevant to us as music teachers. So our first step here, when it comes to becoming a really compassionate person, we have to start by redefining what does compassion mean. Compassion, we often view this as an outward expression towards other people, sometimes to the extent of overextending ourselves. But if we are really honest with ourselves, true compassion starts within. And so we need to find a better and more balanced approach that includes self-compassion if we want to be able to run our music businesses sustainably. Let's talk a little bit around the impact of overextending boundaries that we've set, whether it's in your business or in your personal life. I bet you can think of real-time scenarios where you have extended yourself to the point that it became counterproductive for both yourself and your students. Getting into saying yes to everything, to all of these questions that clients might have or exceptions they might be asking you for. Yes, there are times to make exceptions, but if we're always bending over backwards, the impact of overstepping those boundaries is that we are going to get burnt out. So it is really important to make sure that we hold firm to those boundaries in order to have a sustainable business. The third thing here is to think about self-compassion as a compassionate act. And what I would like to invite you to do is to start with a boundary audit. If you are finding yourself a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit burnt out, start with a boundary audit to really think about where you might be overextending yourself in your business or in your personal life. Give yourself a little bit of a reality check. And I want to encourage you, after you have done that audit, to set a boundary pledge, a set of personal commitments that are going to allow you to uphold the boundaries that you need in order to have a sustainable business. Because when you do that, not only are you showing up better for yourself, you are showing your students that it is important to have good boundaries, and that is going to allow you to teach with genuine compassion. All right. If you want to get a hold of the resources that we mentioned in the full broadcast, or if you'd like to listen to the full broadcast, you can drop the word compassion down below and the Savvy Sara bot will reach out to you. And we will be back next time. Thanks all for listening in. It was really fabulous. And until the next time, stay savvy and stay you, because you are an amazing teacher and there is no one in the world quite like you. And I think you are pretty dang awesome and totally worthy of self-compassion. We will see you next time. Thanks for being here.